Welcome to Worlds Unbound. Make sure to visit the story page on Royal Road to support the author, or to follow along. Link in the description. Toad Town, Dungeon Core Parody. By Dosei. Chapter 21 Missionary's Sermon? Gathered faithful, today I have come to preach the good word of Our Lady Light, the holiest of holy. It is by her divine grace that you today are allowed to prosper. I say to you, gathered sheeplings, would you like to shed your woolen coats and attain enlightenment? Emma gave me a side eye. Yes? We both replied. Of course, you want to hear of Our Fair Lady and the way your souls can attain true happiness. It is only by her grace that happiness can be attained, true happiness. Heretics, infidels, and mutant freaks only worship the evil, sinful word of the dark gods like Deathheim and Arnold the Goblin Butcher. Cast off any sinful notion of sharing in their unholy gospels and embrace the one true divinity, Lady Light. Amy grumbled something under his breath, and quick as lightning, the missionary snapped her head towards him. Just clearing my throat, he lied. Please don't let me stop you. Okay. Don't interrupt again or I'll purge you, she replied cheerfully. Next to where I squatted in the mayor's body, Emma suddenly stood rigidly upright. The woman continued, Have you ever experienced strife in your life? Of course you have. Strife is the nature of the mortal realm, but in the fold of Our Lady and Savior, whose benevolent light covers the world, you will never again have to experience strife. With a small steady donation to our church, you may attain this enlightenment of soul, and when your time is due, her grateful embrace will find you and keep you safe for eternity. I have a question, I said. Emma nudged me aggressively, perhaps to silence me, but I felt it prudent to ask. What sort of donation? How do we donate it? Also, isn't reincarnation a thing? All good questions, you disgusting bug-eyed cretin, she replied. A donation to our church would be 1/4 of all coins minted in your town, as well as 1/4 of all profits from sales that your town makes. That seems a lot, I answered. Emu was at this point punching the side of the mayor's body, though I didn't feel anything. The missionary stepped closer to where I was squatted and looked down at me with a scowl. Don't you want to be saved? He most definitely does, Emu quickly answered on my behalf. Please forgive his colossal stupidity. He's very inbred. The woman stepped back and returned to her cheerful demeanor. I see. Don't worry, with Our Lady's grace, even an inbred, disgusting, and filthy pile of swamp muck like you will be able to find happiness. To answer your second question, all donations will go through a church to Lady Light that you will of course construct within your settlement. Crafting list. Structures worship. Church of Lady Light, workbench, quarry, and mayor's house. Unlocks the ability to evolve your most gullible minion into a preacher, and allows for a monetary donation to Lady Light. Required materials, quarried stone. As for your third question, you can unlock reincarnation to your worship subscription by increasing your donations to 3/4. If you increase your donations to 5/6, you can even unlock our guaranteed success in your next life plan. Personal advice, I recommend you take that model, just looking at how filthy and disgusting and gross and annoying you seem. Thank you for informing us, Emma said. We'll stick with the basic plan. Please preach us your sermon, so we may begin construction on a church as soon as possible. Are we actually going to build a church? I asked him through my mind. Of course, he replied, surprising me with his ability to communicate in this way like me. These psychos will literally reduce our settlement to a smoldering ruin if we don't. Where's System at? I asked, worried she might make a sudden appearance and upset the missionary. I locked her in with the toe collar. The missionary cleared her throat and then did a weird tra-la-la-la kind of uttering a few times. If she was doing an impression of a toad song, she was not very good at it. Okay, no more interruptions or I'll purge you, she announced cheerfully. At the dawn of man, our fair lady created light to illuminate the dark and somber world she found herself within. Her light caused life, such as animals, but only the cute ones, to manifest, as well as human life. Of course, other life was also manifested through the evil, sinful, morally corrupt, vile, unholy dark gods. Life such as goblins, dragons, but not the pretty ones. Those were Lady Light's creations, dark elves, beastkin, lizardmen, ghouls, toads, and all other manner of disgusting and repulsive things. She's very mean. Just bear with it. We still have an hour or two more of this to go. After Lady Light and all her creations wandered their newfound world, they were quick to accept sin and vice into their lives, and so she sent her divine messengers down to this mortal realm, so evils could be purged in her name, and the world made pure and holy. Of these messengers, the most well-known is of course Kevin the Big-Lipped, Carl Carlson Carl of the luscious eyebrows, and Heinrich von Puppenmeyer. With their righteous blades of light, the world was scoured of sin. But alas, sin has a way of always resurfacing, tainting the fair hearts of Lady Light's priests and good folk, and spawning the evil cults of Deathheim, Arnold the Goblin Butcher, the big smiling fat lump, and countless other unmentionable dens of vice. Once every millennia, sometimes half millennia, at times a bit more, there comes a great crisis, a cataclysm, which threatens to upend the morality of our world. At such times, a righteous warrior of light ascends from the plebeian masses to save us all. That's right. Even a plebeian like you can become a holy warrior, if only your faith is strong enough. Rejoice in the knowledge that even filthy gutter spawn like you may one day have a purpose. And it is all thanks to our fair lady. The missionary cleared her throat again, then said, "Let us sing. O Lady Light, lovely lady, pretty cool lady, sexy and definitely good-looking, and totally a hit with everyone. O Lady Light, I like the dresses you wear, they fit you perfectly. You're like a model. Oh, my lady, your beauty dazzles me into a mute stupor. O Lady Light, your horse is so much prettier and nicer than all the other gods. Truly your mount is one of a kind, and it is clear that you paid a lot of money for it. Wow, so wise a businesswoman you are to make such an amazing investment. O Lady Light, your makeup, in all its thick several layers, looks really good on you. Promise. You're totally a trendsetter. Dumb girl, look at all that you've got going on." "Whoa. What is happening?" I asked. "It goes on like this for a while," Emma replied. "O Lady Light, your real estate investments are definitely solid and will appreciate. Your acumen with such matters is truly beyond mortal ken." "Wow. Excellent. Very amazing, most certainly." Emma moved his hands up towards his ears, perhaps to save himself from the oral onslaught of horribly out-of-tune singing with nonsensical words stretched beyond their natural limits. Before he could cover his ears, though, he seemed to realize what he was doing and stopped himself, visibly gritting his teeth and bearing the brutal assault of sounds. "O Lady Light, you're a smash hit with the guys. Just because you're single, it doesn't mean everybody doesn't want you. But you're too good for them. You're a strong, independent woman. O Lady Light, forget about Kevin. You dumped him, not the other way around. Anyone who says otherwise is a filthy liar and will be purged. O Lady Light, that Kevin guy is a total poser. I mean, just look at his disgusting mustache. Ugh! And his dainty fingers and tiny romp. You were too good for him, definitely. His soul suffers forever from the banishment of your love." "Is this an actual song of Lady Light?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yes. She's incredibly vain and needs daily emotional reinforcement through her fanatical servants. O Lady Light, you're totally the greatest. And you have more friends than anyone. You're beloved by everyone. Totally. Not lying, I swear. With your amazing charm, who wouldn't find you irresistible to be around?" The missionary paused and took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. "There are 48 more verses of Lady Light is the coolest, prettiest, and greatest goddess, but now I would like to tell you the gospel of Lady Light and the hater. Once there was a filthy man who lived in a filthy village and had a filthy family. When a wandering missionary came to his disgusting village, the filthy man said he didn't care about how amazing Lady Light was and said she was probably ugly and lonely. He was obviously very wrong, and Lady Light was extremely offended about such a negative hot take. She descended from the heavens upon a very sexy horse made of clouds, which cost her 43 tons in gold to acquire, and looked upon the man, who was obviously spellbound by her tremendous beauty and charm. To the man, she said, "You gross," and then she set him on fire with holy scalding light. The family he left behind through his hateful actions became positive reviewers who totally gave her 5 stars, because that's how amazing she obviously is. 5 stars? I asked. That's right, Amos said, turning to look at the reader. Yes. That means you, the person reading these words right now. To the reader, i.e., he said, people who don't leave 5-star reviews are haters and get purged with holy fire. That makes sense, I replied, suddenly feeling the urge to give a 5-star rating. Up next is the Gospel of Lady Light and her lover Kevin, which teaches us that Lady Light's love is definitely the best thing in the world. As the missionary droned on, I used my appraisal on her to see how strong she was exactly. Name, Judetta. Occupation, door-to-door missionary of the Church of Lady Light. Species, human. Level, 62/100. Alignment, aggressively fanatical and emotionally unstable. Faction, Lady Light's fan club. And that's why Kevin totally sucks and will die sad and alone. The missionary cleared her throat again, before continuing. It is now time for us to pray. Repeat after me or be purged. Don't actually repeat after her. This is a legally binding contract. Just mumble your way through it. O Lady Light, coolest and beautifulest of all the gods in the pantheon, give us today a shining light, so that our inner light may shine as well. Give to us the strength to tell haters to fuck off and let all haters be burnt in scalding holy fire. Without your light we are blind sheep, shepherded along by the fanciful ways of evil creatures, but with your guidance we are beings of purpose and virtue. O Lady Light, we give to you our souls, literally forever, for you to feast upon and grow stronger than all the other upstart deities that totally aped your cool style and business model. Through our mortal suffering and excruciatingly painful deaths, you will blossom in strength, until none can match you and your market share overshadows all your competitors. Forever and always, we are yours to toy with to your desired whims, even if it ends up leading to prolonged suffering for us. Amen. She is starting to terrify me, I confessed. You and me both, Toady. Now let us dance until our feet bleed, such that our Lady Light will settle her gaze on us and bless us with her warmth. Ah, this part always sucks, Ema told me. A sound like an explosion came from the southern quadrant, and we all turned to look towards the cause, which was a flying ball of white matter that arced over my big tree and came flying down towards us, landing only a few meters behind Ema and me with a loud crash and dirt thrown every which way. Standing up from the crater was System, her doll-like body letting off tendrils of steam and smoke. With a few powerful strides, she came right up to the missionary and said,
Congratulations. Lady Light sucks redacted and her mother is a redacted who redacted all the redacted. I hope she gets redacted with a redacted.
Then she torpedoed her foot right into the crotch of the missionary, lifting her up into the air before she fell back down again on her knees, her face instantly robbed of color. Ah, turds, Ema commented. End of chapter. Chapter 22, Divine Purge. It was fun while it lasted, Ema said fatalistically. What happens now? I asked. The cold, uncaring embrace of oblivion. Although Deheim says he's not such a bad guy. As System stood triumphantly above the missionary's defeated and curled-up body, a pillar of light encapsulated her unconscious figure, as though the sun had chosen only to illuminate her. "Are you foo?" Emu started before he was drowned out by a loud shearing sound like a tree being ripped in half, or when the loom minion ran his blade along the cloth he made. The missionary's body shot upright, and then pointed a finger at System. "You dog redacted! How dare you blaspheme against my greatness? What's happening?" I asked Emu. The missionary now had light glowing out of her eyes and her posture had changed. "Congratulations! Gods can't touch me. I'm invincible. No Cretan is beyond my power!" The possessed missionary yelled, and light flowed from her shining eyes and into her outstretched hand. "Godly smite!" A ring of light formed around System's doll feet and covered the ground in elaborate drawings and symbols, before a pillar of light, stronger than the first we'd already seen, enveloped her and utterly scalded the earth upon which she stood, reducing the grass to ashes and turning the soft brown earth into black carbonized matter. When the pillar of light waned in strength and vanished, System was revealed to be unscathed. The possessed missionary didn't take this well and repeated her spell again. "Godly smite!" And again. "Godly smite!" And again. "Godly smite!" She stomped the ground in childish impotence, and then pointed both hands at System, light suffusing her entire body now, and yelled, "Divine castigation!" System's arms were pulled out to the sides by invisible ropes, and her head was wrenched back to stare directly upward, where a massive golden sword the size of my tree hovered. Then the blade descended with incredible speed and tore through System's doll body, somehow not harming the surrounding area despite its enormous size. When this spell passed, System was still, remarkably, unharmed and stood defiantly opposed to the missionary. "Give it up, lady," Ema advised. "She's in a god entity vessel." The missionary suddenly turned her head to Ema, and my guiding fairy seemed to shrink a bit under the attention. "You," she said, pointing her finger at him. "Why did you put this Cretan in a god entity vessel? What's wrong with you? Lady Light, do you really believe we have that power?" The woman paused at his words, then turned back to System. "Those goddamn shit-stained good-for-nothing imps always do whatever the fuck they wish. I'll totally annihilate them." I had a sudden epiphany. "Is that Lady Light? Welcome to the conversation, Toady. You're about 10 minutes late." The missionary spun towards me. "Don't think I've forgotten about you. You fall Cretan. She's not as pretty or as nice as the missionary's words made her seem," I commented. "What part of her sermon made you believe she was nice?" Emu replied, seeming to have found his usual sharp tone, even while standing before a very angry god. "I'm just borrowing this body. Okay. I'm way prettier and cooler and beautifuler in my true form." "I believe you," I told her, and the reply seemed to deflate some of her anger. "I'm sorry our system said all those mean things and kicked your missionary in her reproductive organs. Can you please not erase us from the world if we build a church in our settlement?" Lady Light narrowed her glowing eyes. "Will you venerate and adulate me in song and dance?" "Of course." "Okay. I'll spare you," she replied cheerfully. "But one wrong step and I'm sending my crusades, okay?" "You're being too kind," Ema quickly replied. "Certainly you live up to your praiseworthy reputation." "I do, don't I? You're so smart and cunning with your dealings with us lowly, plebeian, and foul mortal cretins," he told her, really laying it on thick. "I know, right? Thank you for noticing. It's so hard to get people to see that side of me when all they ever talk about is how I crusade too much, or how insane my followers are. You guys are okay, even if you're filthy and gross to look at." "Thank you, Lady Light. You're definitely the coolest god." "I am, aren't I? Okay, I'm out of here, bye." A reverse of the first light pillar emerged out of the missionary's body, and the light in her eyes vanished. After half a minute, the woman carefully got up and then looked around. Her eyes widened as she realized what had happened, then a big grin covered her face. "Oh, my lady! I've got to get home and tell everyone about this. They'll totally make me a prophet or something. Without another word, she ran off in a straight line leading out of my settlement. When it was clear we were alone again, apart from all the minions who had been watching the ordeal in fascinated silence, Amy turned to look at where I was crouched in the mayor's body. You have no idea how close to death we both were. She seemed very unhinged, I replied. They say that ever since a mortal hero named Kevin dumped her, she has been crusading a lot. It was 3,000 years ago though, so you'd think she'd gotten over it by now. I still remember when I got dumped by my 8th cousin 17 times removed, I said with a sigh. Toadella, you were so beautiful, and I still think of the way your water-moist skin glistened in the moonlight. Stop, you're gonna make me barf. Also, is there a toad in this forest you weren't distantly related to? No. But that would lead to a lot of inbreeding and birth defects, he commented. We toads have to protect our superior genes from being diluted by inferior frog genetics. Ema pinched his face with his sausage-fingered palm. We'd best get to building that church, he said, forcefully switching subjects. End of chapter. Chapter 23 Guild? If it had been possible to hop up and down in my essence form, I would have done so, but alas, the closest I came to it was a bizarre back-and-forth floating motion. What are you doing? I'm attempting to hop excitedly in expectation of the last 2 carts arriving. Ema was sitting cross-legged atop Goldie in front of the nearly finished church to Lady Light. Every now and then he would turn towards it and scowl, clearly upset at having to venerate a deity responsible for his death in his mortal life, not to mention the fact that she was opposed to his company, Deathheim Inc. As I continued to attempt my floating hop, our long-awaited carts arrived, the drivers and guards bouncing up and down every time the toad mount hopped forward. Within the pair of carts were a few bits of raw material, which we already had bountiful stores of in our now 5 separate barns, as well as some coins and such. It's finally happening! I exclaimed, beginning to fly around my center in an excited sprint. As the carts crossed the threshold into my domain, I was forcefully pulled into my core.
Congratulations! For evolving into a town, your list of buildings available has expanded and your domain has grown. Warning, your settlement will now actively begin attracting explorers and adventurers.
I awoke to the familiar sight of Amos sitting at the edge of my tree cave. He turned towards me, noticing that I'd awoke, but in his eyes was a terrified expression. What's wrong? I asked. The tree grew. A lot. I moved through the walls of the cave and soared out into the air, looking down at ground below. It had at least increased by twice its usual size, and its branches had tripled in length, the whole oak tree starting to take on an uncanny resemblance to the weeping willow down by the pond I had lived in. How do I get down? Ema asked, clearly not fond of heights like this. I have an idea. All unassigned and idle minions form up below the tree and catch Ema when he jumps. Are you out of your blessed mind? He yelled at me from the tree, as a horde of minions formed the human pyramid below, quickly rising up into an 8-meter-tall structure that swayed unnervingly from side to side. Since I felt that Ema would not take the jump, I forced my essence into his body and made him kick off the edge of the tree cave and soared down towards the horde below. Mid-air I pulled my essence out and got to watch him plummet downwards, screaming obscenities the entire way. Though a handful of minions were crushed when they caught hold of Emu, he himself made it down to the ground unscathed, although his legs remained shaky for a bit. Brilliant idea, right? I asked. I've gotten even smarter thanks to my evolution to town. Don't ever do that again. It looked like fun. I will somehow go back in time and strangle your tadpole self if you forcefully control my body like that again. You inbred small-brained toadstool-smelling imbecile. Have you seen the goose too recently? I asked, changing the subject. Ema pushed one of the minions still holding on to him away, before finding Goldie who was waiting patiently nearby. No. I haven't. It was suspiciously quiet when you were evolving. Suspicious? Think about it. We got to move 8 carts of food and such out of our settlement without being harassed, and our altar of offerings has gone untouched for a week now. Do you think it died? Definitely not. My fear is that it's evolving again or has found a lair or something equally likely to screw us over eventually. What if it found a mate and had offspring? Aima paused, his face draining of color as he thought about it. It would spell disaster. Armies would have to be assembled and heroes would have to be ascended, all to combat the scourge of overpowered geese. It can't be that strong, I commented. You didn't see it last time, since you didn't have the scope yet, but it was level 77 out of 100. I think it must have found a loophole in the leveling system or something. It's definitely way too strong, and given that offspring inherit many of their parents' strengths, any children it sired would be a calamity by themselves. Never mind all that for now, I said. It seems rather prudent to worry about it now. No! I want to see my new requirements. Amos sighed and tossed his hand out, letting me see what was required for my next evolution. Evolution requirements. Town to castle town. Build a castle. Construct walls to separate and encompass the separate areas of your town. Construct a jail and evolve 3 cruel minions to jailer. Reach more than 1,000 minions, 404 of 1,000. Build 1 gentlewomen's club and evolve 20 lazy, unproductive minions to aristocracy. Evolve the most ambitious offspring of 2 aristocracy minions to lord. Evolve 20 guard minions to cavalrymen. Evolve 12 archer minions to sharpshooters. Build 1 marketplace, evolve 3 merchants into wandering traders, and evolve 3 cart-driving minions into caravanners. Establish permanent trade and supply routes. Build 1 branch office of the Adventurers Guild and evolve a mayor minion to guild master. Evolve 5 brave minions to adventurers and give them names. Wow, that's a lot of tasks. We'll need a lot of builders for the walls, and we'll need to expand our farmable land again. It seems like there's no more limit to how many minions you can have, except for space and food and such. What happens if I don't have houses for them? Just for 1,000, we need a lot of space to put houses. Aima leafed through his encyclopedia, then answered. Minions without houses evolve into homeless. That sounds cool. I wouldn't recommend aiming for it. They seem to lose the ability to comprehend commands and they become fiercely territorial. Like bipedal geese, basically. Where do you want to start first? It's pretty open from here on, it seems. Guild. We had to do a bit of urban redevelopment to fit all our new house blueprints. To reach 1,000 minions, we required 150 more houses. Additionally, there had to be made room for the quadrant dividing walls that I had decided on. As minions, builders, and unassigned workers ran around being busy, many idle minions took the opportunity to sneak away into the houses that remained to copulate and multiply. Already after just half a day, I had over 500 minions. Many of my foragers had transitioned to working in the quarry, which now covered half of the southern quadrant, and my woodchoppers worked diligently in teams to constantly bring wood for the carpenter and the builders who tore their way through the raw materials in a frenzy fueled by an abundance of iron and copper tools amongst them, which significantly increased their production speed. Since it was an important building, I put the guild branch office near the mayor's house, but it was a great building that by itself required a mountain of iron, timber, and quarried stone to be built. As it was underway, I worked with Aimno and placed blueprints for all the additional buildings we need, like farming plots, barns, grain windmills, forges, anvils, as well as the great walls that would crisscross my domain. Given that the guild hall takes a while, we may as well start on the castle as well. It'll require a bit of moving around of buildings, like the mayor's house, but it's sure to be a weeks-long project for your builders. Okay. Let's do it. How do you want to design it? It isn't pre-made? No. I have no idea what a castle is supposed to look like. I admitted. Amos stood up from the back of Goldie and stretched his arms. I have some ideas in mind. Then you're in charge. When all the separate blueprints for the castle, of which there were 17, were placed, it was quite a thing to behold, even in its ethereal blurry outline. It had 3 towers, a large garden with an area for a pond, a central courtyard next to its main building, an outer courtyard, and tall walls that, when combined, created a coiling series of gates that had to be bypassed to reach the center, like the shell of a snail. After the blueprints had been placed, and exhausted overworked builders moved on to this new colossal project, and my guild office stood ready. I immediately sent my mayor inside and fed him an abundance of my expanded essence pool, until a green and golden light shone from within and he stepped out like a summoned hero amidst a deluge of strobing lights and blooming gray smoke. Finally! Normal clothes! I looked at Emma, who had actually thrown his hands into the air in celebration. The guild master was wearing a gleaming jade-green suit, but unfortunately had lost his mayoral cone hat. Wait a moment! Emma jumped down from Goldie and strode over to the guild master, then started poking and prodding his suit. What's wrong? His suit. I thought it'd be cashmere, but it's metal. What in all hell's? Listen! He knocked on the jade-green pants, and there came a loud ding each time he struck it with his knuckles. In the distance, as though answering the reverberating clothes of my new guild master, came a loud earth-shaking honk. That's not a good sign, I said. End of chapter. Chapter 24, Minion Unionization? It was worse than I had imagined. By the time I made it to where the Honking Menace had struck, it was already too late to do much, aside from resigning myself to fate's machinations. My guards and archers lay dead and torn apart everywhere along the northeastern part of my settlement, where the houses of the residential north gave way to the armory, Fletchery, and Mount Penn. Many of these buildings also lay in ruins or were on fire. My disfigured toad-caller had come to the scene of the tragedy and was chanting in a bizarre language, somehow holding the menace at bay for now. With a command, I sent for a horde of minions to either drive the monster away or fill its stomach to the point that it gave up devouring and left. As I beheld the behemoth in the distance, I activated my appraisal. Name, Goose 3, Honking Menace. Occupation, King of Geese. Species, Hydra Goose. Level, 183 of 100. Alignment, World-ending calamity of evil. Faction, Geese versus literally all other lifeforms. How is its level higher than the maximum? I asked Emu. The myling scrolled through his encyclopedia frantically, but seemed to arrive at no conclusive answer. It somehow broke the system, but I've also never heard of a Hydra Goose. It could possibly have something to do with that new species and its additional heads. I've seen something similar, though not to this extreme in extent, with midgets and their speed exceeding its maximum value by them evolving an extra toe. A gibbering and mumbling army of unarmed minions of various occupations came charging at the enormous 3-story-tall bird monstrosity, but with each flap of its 3 sets of wings and every stomp of its 6 webbed feet, dozens of them were pulverized or tossed far enough into the air to kill them on landing. In short, it was an absolute slaughter. To make matters worse, its new third head breathed a strange sort of gas that instantly turned anything it touched into the fragrant decaying matter, as though selectively advancing the age of all it touched by decades. I have an idea! Oh! Brave minions, run to the guild office, and get ready for naming and being evolved to adventurers. Only 3 minions made it alive to the guild office, which made sense, given that brave minions seemed to have been at the fore of the unarmed army against the Goose 3. One by one I evolved and named each of them. All of them emerged with their basic clothes having transformed into murky green tunics and fanciful yellow capes, as well as mustard-colored rubber boots. I sent them off to fetch the weapons of the fallen guards and archers to use against the Honking Menace. As they passed where Amo was hiding, he turned to look at my essence floating after them in the air. What? What's wrong with you? Why would you name them that? How heartless are you? I figured they were going to die no matter what, so what does it matter? Emma sighed, but didn't actually retort. The first of my new adventurers found an iron sword and lifted it into the air triumphantly, before charging at the goose three with a loud trilling chirp. Why is he making that noise? I had no answer, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I used my appraisal to see what sort of power the adventurer with the sword had to work with. Name, test number 1. Occupation, adventurer. Species, subhumanoid minion. Level, 1 of 100. Alignment, curious and brave. Faction, Toad Town Adventurers Guild. Why is he so weak? Aren't adventurers supposed to be strong? Adventurers have a high growth potential, if you look at his maximum level, and… Emma winced and never finished his comment. He was just eaten. Well, yeah, growth has to be tended to, like a sapling. It can become a great oak in time, but not if your idea of nurturing growth is throwing them straight into the maws of a calamity-class monster. Look, the other two are going at it now too. Emma sighed as both were immediately crushed under a huge webbed foot. Per test number 1, number 2, and number 3. They were led to the slaughter by a maniac. What now? I asked as I looked at the mountains of death minions. We have barely any minions left to throw at it. Emma just sighed again. Together we watched the calamity tear the eastern and northeastern parts of our settlement to shreds. The honking calamity stomped around my settlement for about 3 hours more, before leaving with a self-satisfied ululating roar that seemed to tremble the ground for kilometers in all directions. I suppose I ought to summon new minions and get back to growing my guard and archer corps, and get some new adventurers for the next time it comes back. Suddenly a dark pillar rose out of the ground in front of my guild office. It was very reflective and reminded me of a stone I had once seen on the shore of my pond. There were a bunch of smiling faces etched all over it, but somehow it didn't seem to be a very happy individual who stepped out of its sliding door. Emma made a horrified noise and quickly got on the ground, burying his forehead in the dirt at the feet of the figure. He was very tall, at least 4 meters, but he looked like a skin-covered skeleton, given that he was as thin as a stick bug. He had 3-meter-long silver-white hair full of braids and gemstones and other trinkets. For clothes, he wore a long all-encompassing robe of woven-together black feathers, and on his face was a porcelain mask with a simple noseless, smiling face. He immediately looked towards where I floated. You? Me? I asked, wondering if he could hear me speak even in my current form. I've been following your progress for a while. After all, my cute little Amuxaquit is your guide as a core. But I have to say, he drew in a deep breath and sighed slowly. You need to take better care of your minions. Why? Who are you? I hope Amuxaquit has taught you about souls and reincarnation. I have, my lord, Emma said, forehead still planted on the ground, as though looking upon the figure could hurt him. Then you should know that many of the souls of your minions have found their way to my realm, and they don't say nice things about working for you, Toad. It's not my fault they die so easily. I defended myself. Also, you still haven't told me who you are. Why should I care what you think? It's my settlement. Shut the hell up, Toady. Emma yelled in outrage at me for challenging the bizarre figure. It is okay, Amuxaquit. Toad, you must treasure the lives of minions, lest they revolt against you and destroy your core. It is a rare thing, but it does happen. And to answer your question, my name is Deathheim, God of Eternity, Undeath, and Minion Unionization. Unionization? What's that? It's a new concept I've been trying to get cores like yourself to adopt, so our soul recycle program doesn't become tainted with angry rebellious minion souls who were abused and mistreated by their cores. Basically, it allows your minions to set terms for how much they wish to work and how they're compensated for their work. That smells like frog's tools, I commented suspiciously. The figure waved a bone nine-fingered hand in the air.
Congratulations! For accepting Lord Deathheim's minion unionization policies, you unlocked the ability to construct a minion help center.
Crafting list. Structures worship. Minion help center. A place for minions to gather and share grievances about their working conditions and negotiate better treatment from their core, as well as receiving the ability to call the Deathheim Incorporated Minion Unionization Hotline for help in settling disputes and such with their core. Required materials, wood and stone. Hey! I didn't accept anything! Upset, I wanted to use my appraisal on the god of minion unionization, but it came up with an error message. You do not have permission to utilize appraisal on a god entity. Deathheim retreated cowardly back into his strange stone tube, and no sooner had the door closed behind him that the entire thing disappeared down into the ground again. I'm not building that thing, I complained. Disrespect Lord Deathheim again and I'll quit, Emma told me angrily. Fine. I'll build it. It's not about the blessed building, you swamp gas for brain. I want you to respect my lord. Okay. Sorry. And yeah, we're not building that dumb building, he told me. Didn't you just tell me not to? We don't need unions. Lord Deathheim's attempts at helping minions is admirable, but it's bad for our productivity, and we need our minions to work their butts off if we want to survive the next attack from that goddamn Hydra goose. I suppose I could make concessions and not just throw minions' lives away for no reason at all. That's literally the bare minimum effort you could make, yes. But what? Coming from you, I will take that as a sign of improvement. Seeing most of my minions die all at once was pretty traumatic. I am a changed toad now. I'll believe it when I see it, Emma replied with a doubtful scowl. Did you see the message earlier about how evolving into a town will begin attracting people? Yeah, it's unlikely to go over well. So far, Earl Pouchhead hasn't deemed your subhuman minions a stain upon the natural order of things, but I doubt adventurers and normal humans will see it the same way. They're quite a judgmental sort, you know. It'll be fine. Why do I feel more anxious now that you've said that? End of chapter. 25. The first guild quest? We were close to 300 minions in total when some strange woman entered my town. The reconstruction of the ruined parts of my settlement was largely completed, and I once again had guards and archers, as well as 5 adventurers whom Emma had named. What are those? They look like adventurers. Real ones, not the imitations you have. Why do they look so? Normal? Handsome? Beautiful? Those weren't the words I'd have used. They look that way because they're normal non-inbred humans. I know the concept of an untainted gene pool may confuse and terrify you, but these are what humans usually look like. Granted, many adventurers are very vain and take their skincare and makeup routines very seriously. Look. One of them is entering the guild office. I quickly possessed the body of the guild master and exclaimed magnanimously, "Welcome to the Toad Town Adventurers Guild!" The man, a tall chainmail plate armor-wearing human, upon whose back hung a sword close to the same height as him. "Salutations, Guild Master of Toad Town." He looked around the hall, where my 5 adventurers currently lounged, having nothing to occupy themselves with. "Did you just recently open? I don't see any quest flyers available." "Emma, what's a quest?" "It's basically a task you give to someone who isn't your minion, in exchange for a reward." "How do I make a quest flyer?" "Just have your guild master sit by his desk and think of the task you have in mind, then it should appear on one of the boards in the room." I hopped over to the master's desk and sat down, the adventurer and his 2 companions staring at me. Then I moved my hand over the stack of papers on the desk in a vague non-committal gesture, and suddenly the topmost paper lifted from the stack and flew to a quest board on the other side of the guild office. Immediately, the 5 minion adventurers got up to look at it, but then they quickly shook their heads and sat back down again. The tall man and his 2 companions walked over to look at the quest. His companions were, a white elf woman who dressed similar to the terrifying missionary and carried a wooden staff with a bell at the end, and a short dwarf woman who carried a strange sort of bow that looked very powerful. I utilized my appraisal to learn more about her weapon. Name: Chally's crossbow. Occupation: crossbow. Species: Crossbonicus hydrihardicus. Level: 21 of 100. Alignment: tendency to kick back with recoil but otherwise friendly. Faction: no scope endorsing crossbows united. Can we build one of those bows? Not yet, you have to be a castle town first. They're strong but troublesome to use in a fight. Guild Master, said the tall man. We'll take this quest. Quest: Calamity Hydragoose. Type: Extermination. Required adventurer rank: Bronze. Reward: 10.000 copper tokens. Description: a Hydragoose has been harassing Toad Town for months. Locate its lair in or around the forest and slay it. Proof of successful kill is required. You're sending them to their deaths. Emma commented. I mean, look at them. Name: Harland. Occupation: Zweihander Vanguard, Bronze rank adventurer. Species: Human. Level: 52 of 100. Alignment: Brave and Reckless. Faction: Heckenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. Name: Chally. Occupation: Crossbow Ranger, Bronze rank adventurer. Species: Black Mountain Dwarf. Level: 46 of 100. Alignment: Arrogant and Cunning. Faction: Heckenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. Name: Simbra Light Veil. Occupation: Divine Purger, Silver rank adventurer. Species: White Elf. Level: 67 of 100. Alignment: Slightly fanatical and very self-centered. Faction: Heckenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. 25. The first guild quest? We were close to 300 minions in total when some strange woman entered my town. The reconstruction of the ruined parts of my settlement was largely completed, and I once again had guards and archers, as well as 5 adventurers whom Emma had named. What are those? They look like adventurers. Real ones, not the imitations you have. Why do they look so? Normal? Handsome? Beautiful? Those weren't the words I'd have used. They look that way because they're normal non-inbred humans. I know the concept of an untainted gene pool may confuse and terrify you, but these are what humans usually look like. Granted, many adventurers are very vain and take their skincare and makeup routines very seriously. Look. One of them is entering the guild office. I quickly possessed the body of the guild master and exclaimed magnanimously, Welcome to the Toad Town Adventurers Guild! The man, a tall chainmail plate armor-wearing human, upon whose back hung a sword close to the same height as him. Salutations, Guild Master of Toad Town! He looked around the hall, where my 5 adventurers currently lounged, having nothing to occupy themselves with. Did you just recently open? I don't see any quest flyers available. Amo, what's a quest? It's basically a task you give to someone who isn't your minion, in exchange for a reward. How do I make a quest flyer? Just have your guild master sit by his desk and think of the task you have in mind, then it should appear on one of the boards in the room. I hopped over to the master's desk and sat down, the adventurer and his 2 companions staring at me. Then I moved my hand over the stack of papers on the desk in a vague non-committal gesture, and suddenly the topmost paper lifted from the stack and flew to a quest board on the other side of the guild office. Immediately, the 5 minion adventurers got up to look at it, but then they quickly shook their heads and sat back down again. The tall man and his 2 companions walked over to look at the quest. His companions were a white elf woman who dressed similar to the terrifying missionary and carried a wooden staff with a bell at the end, and a short dwarf woman who carried a strange sort of bow that looked very powerful. I utilized my appraisal to learn more about her weapon. Name: Chally's crossbow. Occupation: crossbow. Species, Crossbonicus hitvarihardicus. Level, 21 of 100. Alignment, tendency to kick back with recoil but otherwise friendly. Faction, no scope endorsing crossbows united. Can we build one of those bows? Not yet, you have to be a castle town first. They're strong but troublesome to use in a fight. Guild Master, said the tall man. We'll take this quest. Quest, Calamity Hydragoose. Type, Extermination. Required Adventurer rank Bronze. Reward, 10.000 copper tokens. Description: a Hydra goose has been harassing Toad Town for months. Locate its lair in or around the forest and slay it. Proof of successful kill is required. You're sending them to their deaths. Emma commented. I mean, look at them. Name, Harland. Occupation, Zweihander Vanguard, Bronze rank Adventurer. Species, Human. Level, 52 of 100. Alignment, Brave and Reckless. Faction, Hackenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. Name, Chally. Occupation, Crossbow Ranger, Bronze rank Adventurer. Species, Black Mountain Dwarf. Level, 46 of 100. Alignment, Arrogant and Cunning. Faction, Hackenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. Name, Simbra Light Veil. Occupation, Divine Purger, Silver rank Adventurer. Species, White Elf. Level, 67 of 100. Alignment, Slightly fanatical and very self-centered. Faction, Hackenfelt Adventurers Guild, Royal Court of Simbra. They seem pretty strong, I replied. Even their levels combined are less than what the Goose 3 had before it killed all our minions and ransacked the town. With their flyer in hand, the party of 3 left the guild office. As they crossed the threshold, an achievement appeared, and shortly after System came running.
Congratulations! For creating your first Adventurers Guild quest and having one or more adventurers accept it, you have gained the I'll Take That perk. I'll take that. Whenever an adventurer on a quest you created dies, their items are moved into your guild office's vault for distribution amongst other adventurers or to be sold for a profit in your stores.
Is the system encouraging us to get adventurers killed? Emma asked, having suddenly appeared from behind the guild master's desk. I did the best blink I could manage while possessing the guild master in response, then said, Maybe that's not such a bad thing? I suppose I'll look away so long as it's humans, subhumans, and white elves that get got. Is there a way we can follow them? Not technically, Emma said, but you can craft something using the toe collar and, take a look. Crafting list. Structures core upgrades. Scrying Pond, Hermit's Lodge and Adventurers Guild branch office. Unlocks the ability for the core to conjure the image of any adventurers engaging in a quest they have created, even if it is outside their domain. Required materials, Peeping Minion's Soul, 18 eyeballs, and 1 live toad. We are not using an innocent toad for this. Don't you want to see how those 3 fare against the honking calamity? We're not killing the precious toad, are we? From what I can tell, no. All right, fine, I'll call the toe collar over. After about an hour, the scrying pond was finished. The toe collar had brought his own live toad, a precious little murky brown fella named Toad Steve, and I had found many willing donors to give me the eyeballs, before Emma had pointed out that there were already, bizarrely, more than 50 eyeballs in the storage of our barns. The peeping minion was rather easy to find too, since he had been hanging around outside the bakery, licking his lips every time the bakers moved around and their white aprons shifted to reveal the grisly bits underneath. I can't believe what he did to that minion, Emma remarked, visibly shaken. I'm more confused about why the toad needed to eat all those eyeballs, I replied. Have you noticed that your toe collar has reached max level, by the way? I'm not even sure how he survived his one-on-one with the Goose 3. I used my appraisal, and sure enough, the toe collar was now the single strongest minion in my settlement. Name, Toad Collar. Occupation, toad caller. Species, humanoid minion. Level, 50 of 50. Alignment, Chaos Incarnate. Faction, Toad Town. Can I evolve him again? Emil was about to reply, but then frowned. I can't tell you, thanks to the spoiler-free zone perk in action. I hopped closer to the pond that sat in the middle of the guild office floor. Emu, the toad caller, and my 5 listless adventurers all gathered around as well. Let's have a look, I said. End of chapter. Chapter 26 I Spy? Now spectating team, Royal Court of Simbra engaging in quest, Calamity Hydragoose. Harland and Simbra were following Chally as she tracked the sparse evidence of the monster's passing. Mostly, it seemed to be feathers and occasional massive 2-meter-long webbed feet footprints in the forest earth. What's a hydragoose anyway? Asked Harland. Who cares, Harl? Simbra replied. I feel like it has to be strong if it's worth so many coins. Although I've never heard of Toaken as a currency. I've got a proper track on it, Chally told them. As a ranger, she had a talent for finding the tracks of any beast, and their group, although reasonably new, had utilized her skills many times to find the monsters they made a job of hunting. They had previously slain a fire drake in the north, defeated a mature griffin terrorizing the city of Arlsmeadow, and successfully captured a mirror basilisk that had made a nest in the ruins of an ancient city near the town they were based out of, Heckenfeld. Harland was fairly sure they were among the foremost experts on fighting monsters. Sure, there were other parties more renowned for their progress into the various dungeons on the continent, but the Royal Court of Simbra had made quite a name for themselves already. After all, it was this reputation that had seen Earl Sharpie contact them in the first place to slay a strange new monster in this forest within his territory. Seeing the uncharted town in the middle of the forest had been a surprise, but it had been a fortuitous event, given that they would now be paid twice for bringing justice to this hydragoose. Chally lifted a hand and unslung her crossbow, with Harland grasping his own Zweihander shortly after. They were close now. After pushing past some heavy shrubbery, they came out into a clearing of sorts, where a massive pond lay. Its stagnant waters were littered with dead animals, toads, frogs, foxes, small birds, squirrels, rabbits, lizards, and many others that were either so decimated by decay or the feasting of the beast that they were impossible to discern. Harland moved up in front of Chally. He was a vanguard after all, so he was the one who always went in first. He hefted his heavy weapon up in front of himself and said a brief prayer to the Lord of Battle, Morlight. Upon the opposite side of the pond, where the mud met with the grass and moss of the forest, there lay an enormous beast. So that's a hydragoose? He mumbled. It looked bizarre, but its size alone made it fearsome. I ain't never seen such a beastie, Chally said. 6 wings, 6 legs, 3 heads? Simbra appraisal? It's too strong for me to identify it properly. Stronger than the basilisk? Simbra Lightvale nodded, clutching her bell staff a bit tighter. They all shared a glance. What do we think? Harland asked. We slay it, Chally answered arrogantly. It's a lot of money, Simbra added. Harland nodded. We don't give it a chance to retaliate. Start off with your strongest attacks. Chally got on her knees, lifting her crossbow up to her shoulder and sighting down its basic scope. Critical ambush, she said, activating her first augmentation skill. Then she followed it with Hunter's Quarry Sight, Strength Up, Piercing Bolt, and a litany of other skills. Elemental Protection, Simbra chanted, pinging the bell of her staff lightly and moving her hand across them. Physical Protection, she added, repeating the gesture. Then she nodded to Harland and he cast his own skills. As he moved around the side of the pond through the sparse grass and weeds that grew along its edge, he mumbled. Strength Up. Sharpened Blade. All eyes on me. Then he finished with his ultimate buff. Morlight's Dance of Wrath. Power traveled down his body, flooding his mind with hyperfocus and making his muscle turn to unbreakable steel, while his blood felt like scalding lava in his veins. With a single kick from the ground, he strode forward with his Zweihander lifted high above his head, his body moving so fast that he seemed to let off a trail of smoke behind it. "Execution!" he yelled and chopped his blade through one of the slumbering beast's 3 heads. A jarring vibration shot up through his arms, and his blade made a strange whooing sound as it shook from the blunt impact against the impossible tough feathers on the Hydragoose's neck. It was unthinkable, but his strongest attack, imbued with the strength of many buffs, had only managed to slightly ruffle one of the feathers on the monster's neck. As it awoke from the disturbance, it stood up and towered over him by over 7 meters. Its necks untangled themselves from each other, and it prepared to chomp on him with its toothed beak, but he quickly swung his blade through a series of 3 follow-up swings. Onslaught! Again, no real damage was inflicted on the beast, despite each hit striking true, though 2 feathers did fall from its body where he connected. A moment later, a bolt with the force of a thunderstrike slammed into the neck of the nearest head, but aside from nudging it slightly, it had similarly no effect, and the bolt, which Harland had seen tear their way through steel armor, broke apart into 100 fragments. More bolts followed, while Harland continued moving through his repertoire of skills, slashing away at its wings, legs, body, feet, anything that might be a weak point, but nothing happened. He might as well be fighting with a wet towel in his hands. Then a pillar of light enveloped the Hydragoose, and he heard Simbra yell in the distance. "Purging light!" He was momentarily blinded, but when the light faded half a minute later, the monster looked no worse for wear. Harland was about to shout the command to retreat, but then it swung one of its wings at him, and he found himself lifted off the ground, flying across the clearing back towards his team. He regained consciousness momentarily, just in time to see Chally squished underneath a giant webbed foot and Simbra torn into 3 separate pieces by the 3 heads that fought amongst themselves to get the biggest piece. The last thing he saw was a globe build within the mouth of the central head, and then came the scalding fire that ended his life. Spectating cancelled due to team elimination. "Deathheim, give me strength," Ema muttered as the scrying pond cleared and became reflective as a mirror again. "You were right," I told him. "It's too strong." "Yeah, no kidding." "But..." "What?" "Look at all the stuff we got from their deaths," I commented, peeking into the vault of the guild office. "I'm gonna give these items to 3 of my adventurers. You know when I said that it gets tiring when cores have moral dilemmas? Yeah, I take that back. Please have a slight amount of remorse for getting people brutally murdered. I'm putting up the quest again. You're not even listening to me. Quest: Calamity Hydragoose. Type: Extermination. Required adventurer rank: Silver. Reward: 12.500 copper tokens. Description: A Hydragoose has been harassing Toad Town for months. Locate its lair in or around the forest and slay it. Proof of successful kill required. Warning: the Hydragoose has already slain 1 team attempting this quest. It requires a higher rank now, and the reward went up, I commented, annoyed. It also has a warning now, huh? I suppose the system isn't 100% bad. I'm feeling restless. Let's get back to building, Ema told me. Too long without building or being active can be detrimental to a core, especially the stronger you get. I want to build the Gentlewomen's Club. Hell forbid we actually build something useful first. End of chapter. Chapter 27 Gallad. What an ugly building, Emu commented, looking at the Gentlewomen's Club. It was 3 stories tall, made to look like a fancy mansion, and sat up against the inner wall of my settlement, not far from the mayor's house where the new mayor resided and the guild office a bit further down the street, where my 3 newly outfitted adventurers were leaving with a quest flyer in hand. Quest: Look at the shiny. Type: Acquisition. Required adventurer rank: Wood. Reward: 500 copper tokens. Description: Toad Town is looking for intel on ore deposits containing silver, gold, and other valuable metals. This quest can be completed for each unique type of ore deposit found. I'm surprised you actually managed to make your adventurers do something that won't get them immediately killed, Emma commented bleakly. The other two adventurers I had sent off with a quest to find Heckenfeld, the place where the royal court of Simbra had been from. Quest: to Heckenfeld. Type: Discovery. Required adventurer rank: Wood. Reward: 200 copper tokens. Description: Toad Town is looking for intel on the town of Heckenfeld, such as a route map and the makeup of their guild office and other local institutions. Lazy, unproductive slobs. Get over here. Nothing happened. You do realize how counterintuitive it is to try and force lazy, unproductive minions to do something, right? Should I make those slaver whips and man-catchers I unlocked 13 chapters ago? I asked, intentionally breaking the fourth wall to make the reader uncomfortable with my self-awareness. Yes, you dear reader. I am now addressing you directly. That's right. A fictional Toad character is talking directly to you. Stop that, Amos scolded me. You'll drive away the readers. I retreated back into the walls that confined the narrative, and Ema then said, I don't think forcing them into evolving is a great idea. Maybe just let them wander here by themselves. Aristocracy types tend to nominate themselves based on literally fuck all in terms of ability to acumen, so give it just a day and they should be flooding into the Gentlewomen's Club. I've been wondering about something, I said. Oh. Why is our lowest adventurer rank wood? Well, normally it would be tin, but we haven't found that metal yet, so it currently goes like this: wood, stone, knitted yarn, quarried stone, frog hide, tin, iron, copper, bronze, silver, gold, rose gold. All the ones you verbally put a line through are ones we don't possess? Obviously. Also, how were you able to hear that I put a line through them? Same way the readers can see it, I replied, once again turning to look at the reader. Yes, you. The person currently reading this exact sentence in this very moment. Stop that! Amy yelled. By the foot of the tremendous undertaking that was the castle lay my newly finished jail. It was built into the stones of the castle foundation and dove down into the earth like the nest of a burrowing toad. At the bottom lay a hallway with 10 cells, 5 on each side, which had required a lot of wrought iron to construct, but we had a surplus, despite all the construction that required it. After the 10 cells was a metal-reinforced wooden door behind which lay a torture chamber. The 3 jailers I had evolved to work inside the jail all seemed to really like the torture chamber. How did you find 3 cruel minions so fast? Aima wondered. I just went to the butcher shop and took 3 out of the crowd gathered there listening to the morning song of the remaining frog cattle every time a new one was sent to be slaughtered. Lord Deathheim wasn't kidding about the degrading quality of minion souls, Aima commented bleakly. Should we try to imprison someone? I asked. What? No, don't be insane. Guards. Apprehend the newcomer to the Toad Town and put him into the jail. Stop! What's wrong with you, you blessed lunatic? But look at him. Isn't he asking for it? Amy got onto the back of Goldie and hopped towards where I had indicated. A new adventurer was walking down the main avenue of the northern quadrant, eyeing all the merchant shops and such with clear arrogant disdain. Name: Kyle Hawthorne. Occupation: gunslinging ranger, copper rank adventurer. Species: Morat midget. Level: 24 of 100. Alignment: thinks he's the main character. Faction: Kyle Hawthorne's fan club. It was another great day to be Kyle Hawthorne, gunslinging ranger and all-around badass. It was just a shame that he had wandered into some misbegotten shithole that lacked any women to throw themselves at him, because that's how awesome he was. Kyle almost tripped when he stepped on his own coattails again for 17th time in the last 20 minutes, but he managed to make it look cool, because he was Kyle Hawthorne and he was amazing. As he wandered down the disgusting streets of the forest-dwelling town, he noted with dismay how inbred and gross all the inhabitants were, not to mention their utter lack of taste and fashion. With a twirl, he flung out his gun and aimed it at one of the awful creatures, a figure twirling around with 2 loaves of bread in his hands and the white apron he wore seeming to mesmerize the gathered crowd of bug-eyed people as it swished around, unveiling his gruesomely naked bits every time it strayed too far from his body. Kyle spun the gun around again, before depositing it in the holster on the hip of his brilliant mauve-colored suit, with flourishing coat-tails, neat lapels, and expensive fabric. "Not today," he said, with his gruff and cool voice. Then suddenly a group of those inbred-looking people came running at him, dressed in filthy leather suits with rubber boots and weird swimming cap-looking hats. He quickly pulled his gun out again and clicked the trigger, but nothing happened. "Damn you, Friedrich!" he cursed. His runaway manservant had forgotten to reload the weapon for him, and such a task was obviously beneath Kyle Hawthorne, brilliant and world-famous adventurer that he was. "He's really struggling," Emma commented. "I guess we can pretend our arrest was because he was waving his weapon around. What kind of weapon is that? Also, why does he look so gross? It's a gun, I think, although it looks like it has never been fired. Also, pot calling kettle black." Emma rubbed his chubby cheeks. "Although now that you say it, he really is awful to look at. I've never even heard of a Morat midget, but I guess they deserve to go extinct. Yuck. Better lock him away before your minions form a mob to crucify him. They would do that. Even disgusting humanoids like your minions will be upset about a stain against the gods like this." As my guards confiscated the gun and dragged the tiny-eyed, large-toothed midget off to the jail, I gave the weapon an appraisal. Name: Kyle Hawthorne's ornamental flintlock. Occupation: ornament. Species: ornamental firearm, display piece. Level: 1 of 1. Alignment: vain and useless just like its wielder. Faction: Kyle Hawthorne's fan club. I think I'll give this to my guild master. I suppose it would look alright in his hands, though it's clearly not made to be used like a real gun. How do you think he managed to get to copper rank with a useless weapon? Emma shrugged his squat shoulders. Some places just hand out ranks for completing menial tasks. He's probably never even been in a fight. I'm just surprised he made it past childhood without being forcibly removed from the gene pool. End of chapter. Chapter 28, Aristocracy? After locking the disgusting Morat midget in the jail, I unlocked a new achievement.
Congratulations! For jailing an innocent person for the crime of being ugly, you have unlocked the ability to craft an executioner's slab and can now evolve a butcher into an executioner.
Executioner's slab, jail and mayor's house. Unlocks the ability to evolve a butcher into an executioner, and enables the public execution of those in your jail, which will increase minion satisfaction and motivation for an entire day. Required materials: wood. That's kind of messed up. Where should I put it? Emma started massaging the bridge of his tiny nose. Might as well put it right in front of the mayor's house. Great idea! Toady, that was sarcasm. I already placed the blueprint. He sighed loudly, and even Goldie let out an adorable chirp in agreement with her master. I must say, I started, changing the subject. The midget is really complaining a lot. He was jailed just for being ugly, Emma pointed out. By the way, he added, don't you think it's time? Time? Time for what? You know, time to teach your minions how to speak? What do you mean? Please tell me you have noticed. I don't think so. Deathheim grant me strength, he prayed. Toad, your minions are unable to speak. They can literally only gibber, grunt, chirp, or make other inane sounds. But then, how are they able to communicate? I haven't the faintest idea. And didn't some of them go to towns and cities and trade our produce for money? How'd they do that if they couldn't communicate? One of life's great mysteries, that. Although, I suspect they were basically robbed, given how little coin and other random materials returned with the carts. Then how do we teach them to talk? Check it out. He waved his hand into the air and an entry in the crafting list appeared. Crafting list. Structures education. Human language school, workbench, hermit's lodge, and mayor's house. Unlocks the ability for your toe collar to teach the rest of your minions to talk like humans. Required materials, timber, stone, and wrought iron. Wait. My toad collar is capable of speech already? He is the minion who looks most human, Emma replied. Also, have you not heard him when he chants his spells? I'll put it next to the merchant shops so they can learn the language first, then I'll evolve them into wandering merchants. Solid plan, he told me. I can't believe we were robbed, I exclaimed. It was just a theory. Robbed, I say. I will teach my merchants the ability to haggle so fiercely that all the backstabbing people of other towns will have no choice but to let go of all their hard-earned money. How do you even know what haggling is? He asked. The rise of Toad Town is imminent. All right, calm down there, Toady boy. You're starting to worry me again. Sorry. It's just... Yeah? I've discovered something new about myself. Tell me more. I really love money. Amos sighed. Somehow you still manage to let down my expectations and I basically have none left at this point. Oh look! More adventurers! Hells, you've got the attention span of a bee. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment. Oh. I quickly appraised the two newcomers to my settlement. Name, Lysander. Occupation, Juan Magus, Silver Rank Adventurer. Species, Halfling. Level, 69 of 100. Alignment, full of potential. Faction, Woodfell Adventurers Guild, Team Chesticles. Name, Nimnemnam. Occupation, Illusionistic Fleetfoot Scoundrel, Silver Rank Adventurer. Species, definitely human? Level, 62 of 100. Alignment, full of conflicting and overlapping emotions. Faction, Woodfell Adventurers Guild, Team Chesticles. The first character was short like the disgusting Morat midget had been, but looked way less abominable and exuded a charming aura that seemed to make many of my idle and unassigned minions look his way, attention which he seemed to be reveling in, while he twirled his long wand in his hands skillfully. The second person was an odd one though. First off, they were twice as tall as Lysander and their movements were wobbling and uncoordinated, like 3 stones stacked unevenly and shifting constantly in the wind. Where the halfling wore well-fitting, seemingly tailored clothing, the tall figure wore a simple buttoned-up coat that was so long that it dragged behind them as they carefully wobbled down the main avenue towards the wall behind which lay the guild office. Additionally, what little of their body was visible, mainly the head, had a long and thick nose, floppy and huge ears, and dark emerald green skin with scales. Is that 3 goblins in a trench coat? Emma asked. Also, why is that halfling holding his wand like that? Do you think they'll accept the quest to fight the honking calamity? Who knows? Maybe they're just looking around. But I want their items for my adventurers. You want them to die, you mean? Why don't you just kill them in the open and get it over with then? But that would be mean and evil. And basically luring them to their deaths isn't? They themselves decide if they want to take the quest. Alright, fine. Let's just see what they do. Quick as a dragonfly, I flew into the body of my guild master and greeted the 2 new visitors. They ignored my welcoming gestures and went straight to the quest boards, skimming over all the menial ones and picking the one for the Calamity Goose 3. Get the money ready, said the halfling, hefting the flyer in the air in front of the guild master as they left out the door. From the tall figure, who kept banging their forehead against every wooden beam in the building, came 3 separate voices, each saying the same thing. Money! 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 After using the scrying pond and watching the new party struggle to find their quest target for over an hour, I got bored and floated out through the guild office, heading towards the Gentlewomen's Club, where, to my elation, a couple dozen lazy, unproductive minions lounged around within, complaining about the lack of serving staff. Since evolving, I had learned to selectively target things with my essence, not only making me quicker and better at possessing my leader-type minions like the mayor and guild master, but also enabling me to selectively evolve minions, without the need to evacuate all others nearby lest I create another minion meatball monstrosity. So, I quickly swept through the club, evolving the minions into aristocracy until I reached the limit of 20. When all 20 had been evolved, the remaining 4 lazy minions were seen as intruding plebeian scum and were ousted from the club. Quack! I dare say the utter lack of service in this establishment is utter frog's tools. Chirp! Indeed, my fellow high-minded twin. We ought to pen a strongly worded letter to the proprietor, and condemn them for such wanton lack of attention paid to us proper homenfolk. Ribbit! Would anyone like to breed with me? Quack! Why don't you breed with one of those unevolved ones? Croak! Are you sure you even belong here? Chirp! What horny barbarian have we let into our midst, my twins? Sudden laughter broke out across the club, as all the aristocratic minions mocked the one who had dared suggest they mate. This troubled me, because I needed them to do just that to create a minion worthy of becoming a lord. With laughter and croaking sounds filling the club, the mocked aristocrat left with his head low to commit the heinous act of actually mixing his superior lazy and unproductive genes with those of the low-born unevolved minions. What an utter waste of resources, Emma commented. If it wasn't for the fact that it's a requirement, and the literal only way to enable you to evolve a lord for your castle, then I'd suggest we burn it to the ground. Why are they able to talk? I haven't built the human language school yet. Emma quickly scrolled through his encyclopedia. There's no explanation for it, he answered with a shrug. Just one of those things, I guess. Have you seen System lately? Yeah, she's harassing the midget in the jail. What should I do with him? Apologize? Absolutely not. Okay. First off, don't yell at me, you ingrate. Secondly, this is why you think things through. I think I'll execute him. My minions need to have some fun. Emma sighed. Why did you curse me with helping a psycho, Lord Deathheim? End of chapter. Chapter 29. A Feast for Goose Carrot 3? After evolving my butcher to executioner, his crimson Santa Claus outfit turned completely black, and he grew a long braided beard the color of tar. The butcher's axe in his hands evolved into a massive jet-black scythe. For some reason, the spine of the long curving blade was studded with blinking frog eyes and the long handle ended in a webbed foot. Name: Requiem for a Frog. Occupation: Executioner's Scythe. Species: Scythe Tool. Level: 143 of 666. Alignment: Evil. Faction: Tsukumagami, Possessed Object. Just like with when I evolved my mayor into Guild Master, I had to evolve another minion to the now vacant position, but I also had to craft another butcher's axe to give the new butcher. Fortunately, I didn't think there was anything wrong with having 2 weapons in my settlement that inflicted insanity on their wielders. After all, what was the worst that could happen? Carl the Morat midget was yelling obscenities at all the minions gathered around the executioner's slab, while the icon of death, Black Santa, stood ready, a grin on his big-lipped face and an unhinged expression in his huge eyes. The mayor, guild master, and all my new aristocracy stood by themselves, while the unevolved and unassigned minions gathered around, gibbering loudly. Some of them spoke what might pass for words, thanks to completing the intro course to human language at my new school that the toe-caller reluctantly visited once a day to teach my minions for half an hour. I still think this is going to backfire. What if he's the heir to some super-powerful Morat midget dynasty? Or maybe he's an uber-powerful drug kingpin. But he's disgusting, I replied, not sure why Amy cared so much. Execute him. Before Amu could argue his point further, the executioner let his scythe fall on Kyle's neck, sending his head bouncing off the ground for a few meters before it rolled to a standstill. With a bloody hand, the executioner ran his fingers through his braided beard. I wondered what we should do with the body. But then Goldie hopped over and swallowed the headless body in one gulp, a horrified Ema sitting atop her back and unable to stop her before she hopped towards the head next. But then System came running, grabbed the Morat midget's head and cupped it under her armpit and ran off.
Congratulations! For successfully executing a captive of your settlement, you have gained the Death Sentence perk. Death Sentence enables you to tag any humanoid within your domain and mark them for execution. All your enforcement-type minions will attempt to arrest them, and as soon as they have been captured they will be publicly executed.
I wondered what the executioner thought about all this, so I used my mind reader on him. I am fueled by death. With enough lives sacrificed to me and my blade, I can ascend and return to haunt the imps who slew me in a past life. Should we warn the system imps about this? I asked Emu. To heaven with them, he replied. System had disappeared with the head, and I never saw what happened to it in the end. Now spectating Team Chesticle engaging in quest, Calamity Hydra Goose. After a day and a half, they had finally found the first signs of their quarry. Lysander wasn't big on monster hunting quests, but he had assumed the goblin trio would have at least had some sort of tracking skills in their bountiful arsenal. He had focused on firepower almost exclusively, with the only exception being performance enhancers for when he had to really lay down pipe. Granted, he had perhaps gone a bit too overboard with that enchantress in Upper Woodfell, and she had cursed him with a magical STI that made his gait awkward and had some unfortunate side effects on his potency. I expected you to be better than this, Nim Nem Nom, he complained. Nim illusionist, not tracker. Nem Fleetfoot, not ranger. Nom scoundrel, not tracking ranger. Lysander sighed for what must have been the 47th time. For some reason, the goblins insisted on staying in the giant-sized trench coat. I must say, these feathers are quite tough for belonging to a goose, he remarked, lifting one of the steel-strong feathers into the air. If the hollow shaft was attached to a proper handle and the edges sharpened, it might make for quite a powerful dagger. Hydra goose, Nim corrected him. What even is a hydra goose? Lysander asked out loud. Goose, many heads, Nem answered. Hydra goose, very strong, ancient calamity, Nom added. It can't be that bad, he replied. It's just silver rank in difficulty, so it can't be worse than a spine bear or murder slug. It was that bad. Actually, it was worse than just bad. Worse than even a super murder slug, which he had fought only once, an encounter he still bore the sticky scars from. Come on, you useless goblins! I can't keep the shield up much longer, he yelled to his frozen-stiff companions, while using his throbbing magically engorged wand to keep the barrier up, while one of the Goose Three's 3 heads continued spewing scalding flames at them. When cracks began forming along the edges of his arcane panic bubble, the trench coat fell to the ground and the 3 goblins jumped out into a fantastic power pose, before yelling. We the fearsome goblin triplets! Nim! Nem! Nom! Then Nim cast the doppelganger spell that copied all of them 5 times, such that an army of ugly green creatures crowded the area behind Lysander. In that same moment, the panic bubble burst, and he managed to dive aside, as the flame continued on through half the copies and turned them to ashes in a second. With a roar of terrified outrage, the remaining 2 goblins and their doppelganger horde charged the enormous honking calamity. But no sooner had they begun their charge than the 3rd head spewed out noxious gas that shriveled them up into ancient time-ravaged corpses that in the blink of an eye underwent the whole gamut of decay. For fuck's sake! He cursed, seeing his companions immediately defeated. Never trust a goblin's word, the old saying in Woodfell went, but Lysander had not wanted to look a gift horse in the mouth, though, thinking back on it, trusting an illusionist goblin and his obviously fake guild credentials was definitely on him. The vicious breath attack stopped, perhaps because both fire and decaying breath had kicked up such a storm of dust and ash that he was momentarily obscured from its sight. He could turn tail and run, but it was likely the beast would track him, and he wasn't that fast of a runner anyway. Instead, he decided to trust his superior magical powers to defeat this calamitous quarry, and, with no companions to be wary of, he could go hog wild. He squared his shoulders and grinned confidently, then began to work his way through the incantation for the forbidden spell, the most powerful in his extensive catalogue of destructive incantations, Apocalypse Beam. As he swished and flicked his wand around, the air began to vibrate with building potency. But then, as the smoke and ash cloud cleared and the Goose 3 caught sight of him, his wand began to shrink and droop, the magical power seeming to leak from it. Like literally leaking from it as a goopy honey-thick fluid of fluorescent arcane blue. "Huh! This normally doesn't happen to me," he remarked, but then remembered the enchantress curse. As the honking calamity was about to tear him to shreds with its 3 heads, his wand suddenly refilled with vitality, but then continued to become more and more engorged, before, finally, it blew up. Spectating cancelled due to team elimination. A tremendous quake shook all the trees around the settlement, and made Ema let out a terrified squeal when the guild office released an ominous creak. I flew out of the guild master's body and soared high into the air. In the distance, perhaps 300 meters east-northeast of my roughly 200-meter in radius domain, a massive blue fireball was climbing into the air, and the clearing there was probably a smoldering crater now. I slowly descended back down to earth, hoping the adventurers had items I could gift my adventurers when they returned from their discovery quest. "I've been wondering," Amos started, having left the guild office perhaps out of fear of its collapse. "What is that pond? Why is the Goose 3 using it as its den? Do you know where it is in the forest?" I had a sudden, horrible realization. It hadn't occurred to me earlier, since I had never seen the pond from a humanoid's perspective before. "That was my pond! The pond where I was killed! The one ruled over by Toaticus. I have some bad news then." "What? Did you notice all those dead toads in the water?" "Oh no! Those were all my friends, past lovers, and sister cousins." "Probably," he said, wincing a bit at my descriptions. "The Hydra Goose will pay for this," I announced ominously. "Oh, so it's only now that you actually want to punish it? Not for harassing us since day one? Not for literally killing you in your past life? Honestly, what's wrong with you?" End of chapter. Chapter 30, Token Lord? Evolution Requirements. Town to Castle Town. Build a castle. Construct walls to separate and encompass the separate areas of your town. Construct a jail and evolve 3 cruel minions to jailer. Reach more than 1,000 minions, 842 of 1,000. Build 1 gentlewomen's club and evolve 20 lazy, unproductive minions to aristocracy. Evolve the most ambitious offspring of 2 aristocracy minions to lord. Evolve 20 guard minions to cavalrymen. Evolve 12 archer minions to sharpshooters. Build 1 marketplace, evolve 3 merchants to wandering traders, and evolve 3 cart-driving minions to caravanners. Establish permanent trade and supply routes. Build 1 branch office of the Adventurers Guild and evolve a mayor minion to guild master. Evolve 5 brave minions to adventurers and give them names. I looked at the aristocracy offspring after it had been evolved into a lord. Ema looked a bit harder than I did, visibly shaken by the appearance he had taken. 10 points for the actual, proper clothes. He started, but then spun around to where I hovered and launched a chubby index finger at the new lord behind him. "But look at him! Look at his species! What the heaven? He seems normal. Normal! Look at his blessed skin and features, you feeble moron!" Now that I inspected him a bit closer, it was clear that he was different from my other minions. After all, his bulbous eyes were even bigger, and his lips were even thicker and more luscious. Plus his tongue was quite long, which he seemed to enjoy pointing out by swinging it through the air like some kind of weapon. But what really set him apart was the fact that his skin was covered in rounded scales, had become brownish-green, and wore a constantly wet sheen. Also, he had no ears anymore, just 2 small holes. To figure out exactly what Emma was talking about, I used my appraisal. Name, Toad Scander. Occupation, Lord of Town Toad. Species, Toadkin. Level, 50 of 250. Alignment, prideful and haughty. Faction, Toad Town Dynasty. I wasn't sure how, but he had managed to give himself a name, or maybe the system had decided on it, though it hadn't done so with any other minion before. What also caught my eye was that rather than being of the Toad Town faction, he was part of a dynasty now, just like what Toadicus had in the pond, before the honking calamity took over and killed all his offspring and sister-cousin wives. Also, given that his maximum level was 250, he might actually be able to fight the Goose 3 and take vengeance for toads all across the forest. I had just picked up on the unique species when...
Congratulations! For somehow unlocking a new species called Toadkin, you have gained the Superior Toad Genes perk. Superior Toad Genes, henceforth, every offspring born within your domain will manifest traits of the Toadkin species. If 2 such offspring breed, their offspring will become a Toadkin.
System came running, and though Emu tried to quickly hide, she picked him up and put him on her shoulder, before running around in circles with her arms out, making a strange sound with her mouth like broom 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 broom. The Lord sighed, then said, "Where's my quassel?" System immediately stopped, and Emu, who was holding on to her featureless head for dear life, also froze. Then they turned to look at the Lord. "He can speak," Emu muttered. "The aristocrats could speak after their evolutions too," I reminded him. "What do you think I am?" the Lord replied. "Clearly I'm a superior species, you fat little ball of flesh." Emu narrowed his eyes, still sitting on System's shoulders. "Say carrot." "CoreLit," the Lord replied. The Myling grinned sadistically. "Who's the superior species now?" Emu taunted him. "You speech-impeded pretender! You're a minion, behave like one!" "Emu, you're being really mean," I told him. "You clearly just like him because he's some misbegotten abomination that bears a passing resemblance to your former self. Yesterday you executed someone in public for being ugly. Don't fucking start with me, Toady!" Toad Scander adjusted the collar of his fancy brown cashmere suit, then shook his head sadly, before demanding, "I want my quassel finished as soon as possible." "Yes, sir!" I obliged and immediately sent all my builders to obey his command. "Oi, Toady, why are you listening to your minion? You don't get it, Ema!" After a mad 2 days of pushing my builders to the limit, and then beyond, using newly assigned slavers equipped with slaver whips, my castle finally stood finished. But instead of letting the builders rest on their laurels, I immediately put them to work on the quadrant dividing walls, which were still only 20% of the way complete. "Make sure you keep an eye on the defiance levels of your builders," Ema advised me. We were inside the giant castle, watching all the newly assigned maids and servants tend to Lord Toadscander and the assembled honest of sycophantic aristocrats, who all bemoaned their lack of having manifested any traits of the new Toadkin species. "What are they going to do?" I asked him. "Revolt?" Yes. That's exactly what they'll do." As Goldie hopped out through the door leading to the massive castle gardens, carrying Emu on her back, I floated along behind them. Thanks to Emu's design, my large tree stood in the center of the park-like garden, and my childhood pond lay under its massive shadow-casting canopy. The roots of the tree burrowed deep into the ground and down through several levels of the castle, such that the Toadcolor's lodge, which lay beyond outer walls of the castle, still nestled amongst its roots. "I like the design," I told him. "You did well. Don't patronize me. I know I did well." But thank you. Did you notice that we finished the final house to reach the minion cap of 1,000? I asked him. I did, he confirmed. I placed another house, but even though it increased the maximum number of minions, it didn't change the domain's size. I complained. Why can't we get bigger? Amos sighed. I probably should have told you about this, but the size we have now, that is roughly 300 meters in radius out from your tree, is the largest we can naturally grow. Oh no! I wasn't finished. Oh. Once you evolve again, we'll have to redact it in order to expand your domain. Did you just get censored? Yes. Bless system is actively undermining any attempt at planning ahead. Can you tell me when I evolve? Sure, but by then it will be too late. What should I do then? I asked, very confused. Focus on evolving an army, he told me. We have loads of unassigned idle minions that are waiting for a purpose. Let's give them one and also be proactive about what's coming, because once redacted happens, then all the redacted will redacted you. You just got censored again, I told him. I know, you doofus. Read between the lines, maybe. Okay. Amos sighed. I could tell he had lost faith in me. Or maybe he had never had any in the first place? I'll start by evolving my guards and archers. Attaboy, Toady. End of chapter. If you enjoy the story, please leave a like and comment to let me know you want more. Make sure to support the author by liking the official story page on Royal Road, link in the description. Links to the author's Discord group or Patreon can also be found in the description.